Hi, this is Mr. DeCoco here with the 21st video lesson for Tuesday, June 2nd. Today we're going to start our final chapter of the year, Chapter 15. Chapter 15 is titled The Road to the Civil War. So in the next 4 video lessons, we have 4 left and then the school year is over, we're going to learn about how the United States moved to civil war. Now, of course, you know that the Civil War was mostly caused by the issue of slavery, so that's going to come up over and over again. And in Chapter 15, Section 1, the section titled Slavery in the West. The arguments over slavery and, the arguments over whether a state should be free or slave really heated up as the United States was expanding during the Manifest Destiny time period. After we acquired a ton of land after the Mexican War, years after that, it started filling up with people. And they started as territories, but then as they started applying for statehood, the question came up, should this state be slave or should it be free? And of course, compromises, which we'll get to in a minute, were made, and rules were established. But as time passed, they found out these compromises and rules really didn't solve the issue. At first, they made both the North and South happy. They made slave owners and people against slavery happy. But as time passed, neither side was really happy because the South came to believe that slavery was a property issue and people should be able to own property anywhere in the United States, not just in certain areas. In the North, people started to view slavery as a moral issue, that it was simply wrong for a human being to own another human being, and that it should not be legal anywhere in the United States. So with that said, I just want to touch upon a few points in Section 1 of Chapter 15 and let you know what your assignment is and let you get started with that. So the very first compromise that was made is something that we actually covered back in chapter, I believe it was 11. And that was the Missouri Compromise of 1820. In 1820, this is before Andrew Jackson was president, a very young Henry Clay proposed to solve a major problem. The problem was this: Missouri was a territory looking to become a state. And at that time, there were 11 free states and 11 slave states in the United States. But if Missouri became a slave state, there would have been 12 slave states and 11 free. So the North was totally against the admission of Missouri as a state. But it had way too many people to stay as a territory and had to become a state. So Henry Clay came up with a compromise, a proposal to make both sides happy. The proposal had 3 parts. 1, Missouri would come in as a slave state. Number 2, Maine would be created in the North as a free state. Remember, at the time, Maine was land owned by Massachusetts. So really it was Massachusetts theoretically, but they were going to split Massachusetts and make that very northern part a free state called Maine, which exists today. So the third part is the one that would come back to sort of cause some problems years later. Henry Clay said in the future, any new state that's added to the United States north of the 36° 30 north latitude line on the map would be free. Anything south of that line would be slave. Now keep in mind a compromise. The word compromise means giving up some of what you want in order to get most of what you want. So in this compromise, both the North and the South gave up a little of what they wanted to get most of what they wanted. Both sides wanted to preserve the balance of free and slave states. Neither side wanted to give up power in Congress. And they both wanted a system to establish new states in the future. So in 1820, the Missouri Compromise at the time was a success. It put to rest the slavery argument, at least for a little while. Years later, though, came the issue of California. California rapidly went from being a territory to a state in about a year. namely because of the California gold rush. The issue with California was that some of it was below that 36 degree 39 line, and some of it was north of it. So theoretically, California, half should have been slave, half should have been free. There should have been two states made out of it. But the people of California did not want to do that. They wanted one state, and the vast majority of Californians were against slavery. The South was very worried that if California and then later Utah and Oregon entered the United States as free states, they would be outnumbered greatly in Congress. So once again, Henry Clay came up with a proposal. Now keep in mind, this is in 1850. It's 30 years after the Missouri Compromise. Henry Clay is an old man by now, and this is one of the last things he did as a senator. He came up with an idea that had 4 parts. He said, 1, California will enter as a free state. Number 2, the New Mexico Territory would have no restrictions on slavery. That would satisfy the slave states. The third thing he added was that the slave trade would be banned in Washington, D.C. The slave trade, but not slavery itself. So that satisfied Northerners, but it also satisfied Southerners, because Southerners could say, well, at least we can still own a slave, we just can't buy and sell them. And then finally, the last one was designed to satisfy the South. Henry Clay, as the 4th provision of the Compromise of 1850, he asked for a stronger fugitive slave law. Okay. This compromise did not pass easily in Congress. It took 7 months for Congress to debate this. They argued, they debated. The compromise many times almost fell apart, but eventually the plan was passed in a series of separate measures. But this compromise of 1850 would be the last compromise that would ever be made between the North and South. After this, the arguments would get more bitter. Neither side wanted to give up anything at this point to get most of what they wanted. And when that happens, compromise goes out the window, and people do everything in their power to get everything they want. And it would eventually lead to more bitter arguments, even violence, and eventually the U.S. Civil War. So your assignment for today, for this video lesson, would be to complete the questions that go with Chapter 15, Section 1. Use your textbook for help. Okay. Again, the textbook is online. A link is attached to the classroom page. Use Chapter 15, Section 1 to help you answer the questions. After every question, there's a page number that'll help guide you to where you can find that answer. Watch the video links associated with the lesson, and make sure you submit it in a timely fashion. Okay, most of you are doing that, but a few people are handing in assignments much later than they're due, and then they're wondering why they still have missings. If you do hand an assignment late, send me an email just to remind me, because once, if it's submitted late, it doesn't necessarily come up right away. I have to search for it. So just make me aware so I can find it. All right, till then, stay safe, stay connected, and we'll see you next video lesson. Bye-bye.